Tom Pecinka stars in the play Stereophonic on Broadway. I'm David Buchanan with Gold Derby. Tom, I feel like this show does such an incredible job of transporting the audience to 1970s, the rock and roll scene. The music is obviously incredible, and so are the costumes, and your look in particular is so memorable. How much, when you put on that wardrobe, helps you transport to that time and to find Peter as a character?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest insecurities I had when we started off at Playwrights was, how does this guy move? How does this guy enter a room? How does this guy leave a room? How does he take up space? Because he's a big character and he's a rock star, and I'm not, you know. And I initially thought, well, he has to be cool, you know? And so I think I got initially into sort of like a lackadaisical kind of like leaned back attitude, but Peter is very forward moving the entire time. And putting on those clothes did so much of the work for me. I'm not an actor who really ascribes to this idea that, like, once you put on the shoes, you'll be fine. But for this show, I'm wearing 4-inch heels, boots when I walk on stage for the first time. And I'm already a pretty tall guy to begin with. So it just gives you that sort of power position. And I always joke with Sarah, I'm like, when you wear these boots, you got to strut, so that's kind of how it's worked for me.
You mentioned doing the show at Playwrights Horizons about a year ago, a little bit less. I just wanted to ask you about that experience of, finding your character and developing your relationships as an ensemble, and now doing it on Broadway. What has that experience been like over the course of this year, kind of transferring with the show and really kind of building that rapport off stage so that the work on stage is even richer?
Yeah, I think so much of the Playwrights run was really fake it till you make it. We are a real band. Whenever I've done interviews for the show, everyone says, "Oh, you're this fake band." I'm like, "No, no, no. We're a very real band. Like, we are in rehearsal every day together. We play every day together. We're connected by headphones." So building the band, building the 3+ hour show together was grueling and filled with insecurity and filled with, like, is this gonna work? Am I gonna be able to do this? Um, but I think because of that, and that the fact that we were all feeling that, it brought us a lot closer together. But um, you're portraying a group of people who are together all the time, and they've been together for years. So for the Playwrights run, I think it was a little bit of like constructing that. Whereas now we've done so much stuff together, both inside the theater and outside the theater. Um, I talked to Sarah like once we got into the theater, and I said, we know each other now. There's that inherent trust built already. And I think if there's anything that has elevated in the Broadway run when people come to see it, I think you'll get that sense of a real familiarity of this group of people.
Yeah, that's so integral to the success of the show because you've been a band for some time now, and especially your dynamic with Peter's dynamic with Diana, because you've been together supposedly for 9 years as a couple. When I spoke to Sarah, she had kind of fleshed out a backstory of how you two met. She thinks that Peter, taught her to drive. Like she's really kind of crafted a lot of a backstory. I just wanted to ask you, if you did any kind of work thinking about what drew these characters to each other, because we meet them at kind of a pivotal and challenging moment. But what was that kind of spark between them, do you think, when they first met all those years ago?
Well, I think, I don't have, I didn't sit down and write it out or, really sit down and construct every little detail in my mind. The play gives you little details of they're from Phoenix and they've known each other for now. They've been together for 9 years. They've probably known each other longer. Um, the real key to me was that they met each other very young, probably high school age. And he's watched her grow, she's watched him grow. Um, and I think when you have a relationship with someone like that, where you've gotten to know each other and you've been around each other and you've lived together and you've been in each other's worlds for, and so intimately for almost a decade, and I think obviously more than a decade for them. Um, you can hurt each other more, you can love each other more. Um, you know each other's buttons. Um, and you have an investment in them because you've seen them change and grow and learn and unlearn and maybe get worse as a human being. I don't know, but
Yeah, it's an interesting point and dynamic because we're seeing them kind of on the precipice of success. The band is really starting to take off, and Diana's song in particular is charting again and charting really well. And I think that's such a an early revealing moment of your character, how he reacts to the news that, she's now her song has made the top 8 or whatnot and continues to climb. I just wanted to ask you about that dynamic. Like what about success is troubling to Peter, and the more successful the band gets, he seems I don't know what the right word is, and maybe you could tell me how you kind of see his behavior changing, but does he get more difficult? The band certainly seems to have there's more friction the more success accumulates.
yeah, I mean, I think success is a very fragile thing. Fame, success, people start to know who you are. I think we're all experiencing a little bit of that ourselves with this show and the success of this show. Um, I'm doing interviews for really the first time. I'm doing photo shoots for the first time. I'm getting more followers on Instagram. So there's more eyes on you. And I think people think, oh, yeah, I want to be famous because life gets easier. And I think in some ways, life gets more complicated. Um, how you protect yourself. Um, and I think for Peter, you know, Diana's been his ride or die forever. And I think he's also had a power position over her because he is sort of the gatekeeper to her success because she doesn't know how to play and she doesn't know how to write songs. And now that she's starting to go off on her own and grow in a different way, there's fear, in that success. And then I think in the band success and in his own success, it's like I think he has a lot of fear of failure, like don't mess this up because this is all you have. Peter doesn't have a lot of friends. He doesn't have a lot of family, or his relationship with his family is messed up. So this album and the success of this album is make or break for him. And with that comes a lot of terror.
Yeah, let's talk about you mentioned you guys are really a band and you've worked hard at making these incredible songs sound so great. I mean, Masquerade, when we hear it, I think that's the only song in the show that we hear in full. And we see the real development of that song and kind of getting it right in the recording session, which is such a fabulous sequence.
Yeah.
And I think it's so electric because when we kind of hear it completed and it comes out so good, and we see the band kind of react, they're so ecstatic about how it sounds. It's such a kind of euphoric moment for, I think, the characters and for the audience. I wanted to ask you how that feels as a performer. It's a challenging sequence because you keep tinkering with the start of the song to get it right. How does it feel to kind of climb that mountain at the end of the first 2 acts, as a performer and as Peter? Like, how does Peter feel about how that's turned out?
Yeah, I mean, I think, being an actor and doing theater is so interesting. I always say to people, it's like your mind is going in 12 tracks because it's like I'm me, I'm Tom, but I'm also Peter, but I'm also in a play, but I'm also acting, but I'm also living, but I'm also playing music, and I'm a rock star, but I'm also I, I can only play a couple songs on the guitar. So it's it's fascinating to me, and I try to keep it fascinating as opposed to terrifying. Um, I think what's strange about the audience's experience is that because we're in that bubble of the soundproof room, it is actually soundproof. So like I can't tell if the audience is enjoying the song or not. I so I sort of choose to cut the audience off. We are in the studio and it is just us and that's it. And so I have to that is probably the moment I most dig into the character, because for the actor it's the most terrifying moment. You know, that was the song. I had never played a riff on the guitar before playing learning that song for the audition. I live in Connecticut and I went to like a mom and pop guitar store to have a lesson for the callback, and I sent him the video of the riff, and he was like, you won't be able to do this. Like your level is not at there at all. You're going to lose this job. And I'm the type of person, when someone tells me I can't do something, I double down. Thank God, because now I'm doing this job. But off Broadway, there were moments where my hands would shake. I would just get into a panic with that song in particular. And I would just drop out. There were nights where I dropped out of the entire song. But now I have a lot of fun playing it, which is a very different experience. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's an incredible story. I want to know too, like, I think one of the sneaky emotional kind of punches at the end of the show is when the audience learns that Masquerade has been dropped from the album. Uh,
Yeah.
which, I think when the audience hears it, I don't know what it is night to night, but I think the audience, is so into that song. It's obviously a brilliant piece of writing. And then to hear it's not on the album is kind of shocking. Why do you think that is? Like, as Peter, like, is that a decision Peter makes? Does Peter not, is he not on board with that song? Like, what is behind that decision, do you think?
You know, honestly, I haven't really thought about it. You know, I was at my parents' house last night, and my dad was like, we have an argument. You know, when they say that Masquerade was cut, your mother thinks that part of the song was cut. I think that the whole song was cut. What's the reality? I'm like, no, the whole song is gone, and there are better songs that you never hear. And David added that line pretty late into off Broadway rehearsal. And we were all sort of kind of like, what? Like, both at the fact that it was cut in the play, but also like, why are you adding this information? And I kind of love it, because it's like all these songs that you've just fallen in love with as an audience, most of them are gone. And that says so much about the creative process. You know, that's like you have to kill your children sometimes when you're making something, and it's hard. And I think that's what the show's about. Like the and for Peter too, I think a lot of people have very strong reactions to Peter. And as an actor, it can be very hard to act through those reactions. But I'm so glad that he incites such a response, because he is a perfectionist and he cares deeply about what he's doing. And so much so that his masterpiece song is not good enough for him. And I don't think he cuts it because he's insecure about the song. I think he cuts it because he cares more about the whole of the album than the song, you know?
Yeah, that's a great read on it. I hadn't thought of it that way, but that's a great point, especially because Act Two, or I guess I should say Acts Three and Four, are really very challenging for Peter. I mean, professionally and personally, there's a lot more tumult in that part than in the opening acts. And I just have to ask you about, there's one scene in particular I won't forget your performance of for a very long time, which is when you're kind of alone, at it outside of the booth and just trembling about what you've heard. I mean, you've broken up with Diana. Simon has confronted you about, your control of the band. It's such a, I think, very low moment. I just wanted to ask you about, preparing to go there as an actor, because like I said, watching your kind of hand tremble, that will stay with me for a very long time. So what goes into preparing for that kind of a physical reaction to the material?
You know, this play, more than probably any play I've ever done, and I've worked on, I've most of my career has been doing Shakespeare and Chekhov and Ibsen, great writers. I haven't really gotten to do a lot of new plays. Um, but this play asks me to be as brave of an actor as I ever have been asked to be. And if you don't go there every night, it doesn't work. Um, there when I first started exploring that scene, I was very much like, I remember the second preview off Broadway, this thought came to my mind because it was a very hostile audience to Peter that night. It was kind of the first time that I experienced it. And it sort of broke my heart because I love Peter. I have to. And when that scene came up, this thought came to my head like a flash. And I went, oh, now is your time to win them over, win them back. And I immediately said, no, that's not my job. My job is to tell the truth. My job is to exist. My job is, I think there are a lot of actors who want to be liked by audiences. And I always said I'm not that actor. But when you're confronted with hostility from an audience, it really challenges you because I think we all want to be liked. But my job is, instead of making the audience like Peter, it's to make the audience see Peter. And that's a moment where I can allow them to see who this person is. He's a survivor. He's someone who is trying to do something great. And because of that, he has to bottle a lot of stuff up and get moving. Because honestly, most of the members of the band are not like that. He has to be that steadying force, the captain of the ship, no matter what happens. And when things start to fall apart, everyone abandons him, you know, except for maybe Grover. But it's like so many punches in a row. And I just kind of fill it up, fill it up, fill it up, and then hopefully let it loose. Diana leaves him, Reg leaves him, Simon leaves him, like right in a row, you know? So from his point of view, he's like, no one's here for me and I'm alone. And I say that in the scene, I'm alone, you know? And the writing does a lot of the work, to say something like, I don't have a family, I'll never have a family. I'm alone. And to really feel that, it kind of does the work for you.
Yeah, it's a stunning, an incredible scene. And I do think, to your point about what helps to win audiences over, is there's just this one line at the end between Grover and Diana when she says that it was Peter. Everybody knew that he was lying about his credentials, but Peter, wanted to take a chance on you. What does that tell you about the character? Because that to me is really a moment where we see a side of Peter that maybe we haven't, seen in his interactions with the other characters.
I mean, it tells me a lot, but I think if I were to pick one or two things, I think it tells you that Peter, behind everything, has a good heart, um, and believes in talent, and wants to do, and I think he sees a lot of himself in Grover, and I think if you look at the backstory of Grover, the little hints you get of like he had a messed up family too, and his relationship to his father was kind of abandonment, um and at the very end, I call Grover brother, and I think Peter's trying to do something for someone that was never done for him. Take a chance on this kid, and maybe something amazing will come out of it. You know, um, and I love that, and I love that I'm not on stage for it. Someone said the other day, they were like, when I watched the play, I hated you so much. But then when I heard that line, my mind like went like reversed through the entire play and to each interaction you had with Grover. And I saw it in a totally different light. And I think that's kind of the genius of that one little line.
Absolutely. Tom Pecinka, congratulations on Stereophonic. Thank you so much for talking to Gold Derby today.
Thank you.